Towards the end of the First World War, left-wing Germans rose up in a revolution and successfully ousted the Kaiser. However, the German Revolution fell short of a communist takeover, as many communist leaders, like Rosa Luxemburg, were killed. Instead, Friedrich Ebert took power and democratically led a coalition of parties known as the Weimar government. This was mainly made up of members of the left-leaning parties like the SPD and DDP, but also included members of the conservative Catholic Centrum Party. And in order to quell communist uprisings and restore order, they often used the Freikorps, which were paramilitaries formed by unemployed war veterans. By 1919, the Freikorps numbered around 250,000. But as part of the Treaty of Versailles, the Germans were forced to reduce the size of its military and disband the Freikorps units. The Weimar government were willing to start disbanding the Freikorps units, since the communists had largely been crushed and they could now pose a threat. This is because many of their leaders supported a more nationalistic and militaristic government. For instance, Wolfgang Kapp had been planning a coup for some time, but he only had a very small role in the coup that bears his name. So in February 1920, Defense Minister Nassau began to disband some units, one of which was led by Hermann Ehrhardt, and had 6,000 elite troops stationed outside Berlin. Ehrhardt, however, refused to comply and got support from people within the regular army, in particular General Ludendorff. Ludendorff then met with Ebert and demanded, amongst other things, he be made the supreme commander of the regular army. This was of course rejected, so on March 11th, he met with Ehrhardt to discuss taking Berlin. As Ehrhardt prepared his men, Ludwig went on to form alliances with other prominent military men. This included Waldemar Pabst, who ordered the execution of Rosa Luxemburg, and the hero of the First World War, Ludendorff. Ludendorff had become increasingly more nationalistic after the war and helped spread the stab in the back myth to explain Germany's defeat. Nassau, however, was made aware of the coup and prepared the capital's defenses. However, his forces were made up of many coup sympathizers. For instance, General Hans von Seck and others ordered that their men do not shoot at the oncoming forces. The assault on the city began late on the 12th and easily advanced as regular soldiers began to defect. So an emergency cabinet meeting was called for. At 4 a.m. that night, Ebert and high-ranking government officials decided to flee the city, first to Dresden and then to Stuttgart. Just before the coup, leaders took the government quarters. But the Weimar government had very little support from regional leaders. Around Germany, for instance, General Merker in Dresden didn't give the government his full support, and in Bavaria, Gustav von Kahr, a radical nationalist, would take power a couple days later. Meanwhile, in Berlin, Lützitz was made head of the army and Kapp was made chancellor. But from Stuttgart, Ebert called on the working class to begin a general strike on the 13th. This received enormous support from the people, and 12 million workers went on strike. And in the rural region, communists fought back the Freikorps and took over cities like Essen and Dortmund. Cities went without gas, water, and electricity. Trains stopped running, factories, schools, and most businesses were then shut down. So communication lines were also cut, and the coup leaders could now no longer organize their troops or even ask workers to go back to work, as no newspapers were being printed. So on the 15th, just a couple days after taking Berlin, the coup leaders realized they could not keep power and entered into negotiations with the Weimar government. Ebert, however, wanted to win back support from the military, so he persecuted very few of the leaders, and von Seck, who had defied the government's orders during the putsch, was made head of the army. And to further bring the coup supporters back into the fold, Ebert agreed to hold elections. But in the West, communists in the Ruhr region continued to hold on to cities. The army was eventually sent in to crush the Red Army, but the SDP lost a great deal of support. First for not punishing the right-wing coup leaders, and then for repressing their fellow socialists and left-wingers. So in the next elections, they lost a lot of seats, while the more radical left SPD gained, and so too did the far-right DNP.